Hogwarts Gene-Splicing Prodigy, Magical Creatures Meets Sci-Fi. Like, share and subscribe. Episode 51. Who built the response room? Can crowns increase wisdom? Leaving the room of requirement, Peter looked at the door that was slowly disappearing. He knew that somewhere across the wall, there was Voldemort's Horcrux, the Ravenclaw crown that was said to increase wisdom. He wasn't ready to find the Horcrux for the time being. He wasn't sure if he could resist the seductive magic on the Horcrux, so he decided to find a suitable opportunity to tell Dumbledore about the Horcrux. As for the idea of dealing with Horcruxes by himself, it didn't appear in Peter's mind. He was a Slytherin and would never put himself in a dangerous situation. And this Horcrux is not easy to find. First of all, you need to choose the place where you need to hide things from among the many options. Even if you enter this house, you want to find a certain dilapidated crown from a space the size of a football field. It's not easy either. There is no hidden danger that someone just finds the crown after entering. So this crown, let it continue to stay in the room of responsiveness. George looked at the wall, touched it in disbelief, and couldn't help but sigh. It's incredible. I don't know which genius invented this house. Fred was also very surprised. He vowed, I'm sure not many people know about this room. Otherwise, it would have been spread all over the place. Peter shook his head and said, I think Dumbledore must know that it's not far from the headmaster's office, and he's been in this school for hundreds of years, and there's no reason he couldn't find it. The twins nodded. Yes, Dumbledore is the great wizard. Of course he knows. Peter wasn't at all surprised by the adoration of Dumbledore by Gryffindor's students. He continued, as for who built this house, I think it's probably Ms. Ravenclaw. It is recorded in the history of the school that she built those moving stairs. It is still in operation after more than 1,000 years. Ms. Ravenclaw is not only powerful, but also a very famous alchemist at that time. Her most famous work is the crown that can increase wisdom. There are still many people in Ravenclaw who have not given up their search for it. And Salazar Slytherin was known for black magic and potions, and left the school shortly after it was founded. Godric Gryffindor left Hogwarts shortly after Slytherin left. As for Helga Hufflepuff, it's known for food magic and herbalism. So it's unlikely that they built this room of request. George stared at Peter dumbfounded, and eloquently told the secret history he had never heard before, and asked, Peter, where did you know so much? Didn't you come from the Muggle world? How do you feel that you are more familiar with the magic world than I am? Fred also looked eager. If I can find Ravenclaw's crown, will I be able to increase my wisdom and figure out a way to make money? Peter looked at the two of them in surprise. Have you never read books? There are nearly 1,000 years of books in the library. As long as you read more, analyze, you can get these things. As for the claim that the crown can increase wisdom, I don't really believe it. I think the crown of Ms. Ravenclaw can only make people more focused and more rational, so as to reduce interference from the outside world and make people able to focus on one thing with all your heart to improve efficiency. Peter looked at the wall, as if looking through the wall, but this ability is also very powerful. This is a good helper for learning. If I can have this crown, maybe in the 7 years of school, maybe I can even finish all the books in the library. As he said that, Peter cursed Voldemort in his heart for turning such an alchemy item into a Horcrux. What a waste. He wondered if in the future he would be able to get out and destroy Voldemort's soul without damaging the crown. When the twins heard that he wanted to finish reading all the books, their eyes widened and they held out their thumbs tremblingly. You are amazing. The students in Ravenclaw are not as fond of learning as you are. I think the Sorting Hat must have made a mistake. You should go to Ravenclaw. Peter smiled and waved his hands. The Sorting Hat was hesitating between Slytherin and Gryffindor at the beginning, and he finally sorted me into Slytherin. So this kind of thing is not necessarily, maybe your academy will have students who like to study very much in the future. Woolen cloth. The twins looked like you were joking. How is it possible? If there is someone in Gryffindor who loves learning so much, then the sun must have come out of the west. As long as our academy cannot be deducted credits, it will be good. The other time is to play or spend the night. Where is the time to read books? Peter looked at the expressions of the two of them, covered his stomach and laughed, saying, you guys know a lot about your academy, but are you sure you're not talking about yourself? Professor McGonagall and Principal Dumbledore are both from your academy. I heard that when they went to school, they were all academic masters. So how about your academy? When the two brothers heard it, they suddenly said, yeah, Bill got 12 honors when he graduated last year. At that time, he made my mother so happy and called Bill baby all day long. It made us disgusted. So they are just a special case. It's like a box of BB multi-flavored beans. Occasionally, a good taste is found, which does not mean that all multi-flavored beans can be eaten. George said with a look of certainty. That's right, so we have to exclude them. We are the most representative students of Gryffindor. We must not let some of their good students represent the entire Gryffindor. This is an insult to us poor students. Fred responded funny. And rode. Peter covered his mouth with laughter and couldn't stand up straight. The twins were so funny. Episode 52, Magic is Simple? Money plan for twins. Peter took the Weasley twins and walked down the stairs. Just looking at the stairs that swayed from side to side, Peter's road-crazy attributes broke out again. It's just that Peter isn't worried anymore since he got Professor Flitwick's spell notes. He took out his wand and said, "Show me the way." In an instant, a beam of light shot out from the top of the wand, turning into a beam of light, pointing in the direction Peter wanted to go. The twins looked at Peter's movements and asked curiously, "What kind of magic do you have, Peter?" Peter led the two of them towards the direction of the beam with satisfaction, and said, "Obviously, this is a guiding spell. It can guide us on the way, and you all know that I often get lost, which I specially learned from Professor Flitwick. Learn with this magic, you don't have to worry about getting lost." Fred touched the beam curiously, and said with interest, "Peter, teach us this spell, so that I can escape Filch's pursuit as soon as possible when I travel at night." George nodded in agreement. That old Filch, always staring at us, and his nasty cat, nearly caught us a few times. When we were punished by labor, this old guy let us wash the chamber pot all night. Peter was speechless. The Weasley twins were completely on Filch. He was a little hesitant. Should he tell these two people about the secret passage to Hogsmeade? You must know that Joko's magic joke shop is there. There are a lot of trick items there. If the twins find out, I'm afraid they won't mind spending some money on Filch. But thinking that even if they don't tell them, with their ability, I am afraid that they will soon be able to find the secret way to Hogsmeade. You must know that there is more than one secret way to Hogsmeade. As Peter walked, he said to the two behind him, "It's not easy for you to learn this spell. Professor Flitwick said that this can only be learned in 6th grade. When I went to ask for advice, he was reluctant to teach me at first. He was only willing to teach me the spells in the 1st grade textbooks after he had cast all the spells. If you want to learn, be prepared to fail." When George and Fred heard Peter's words, they looked at each other. George asked in disbelief, "Peter, did you really finish all the magic knowledge in the 1st grade textbook?" Peter didn't see the expressions of the two of them, and said, "As a matter of course, there are not many spells to be learned in the 1st grade, and they are all very simple. You can learn them after a few tries. But like what I used in the potions class. The voice-changing spell and this guide spell are relatively more difficult, and it took me a while to master it." "Simple." Fred moaned, the corners of his mouth twitched, and then said angrily, "I haven't even learned the floating charm that I taught last week." "You said it's simple." Merlin's stinky socks, does it hit people like that? "Seriously," George said, looking at Peter who turned to look at them, "you must never talk like that in front of other people in the future, or you will be beaten." Peter looked puzzled. "Is it really that difficult? I have mastered the floating spell before school started, and now I can cast it even if I don't need to chant it. I always think it's the foundation of the basics. I can't cast it. I can only say that I didn't listen carefully." Fredra took George's hand and said angrily, "George, let me go. I'm going to fight him. Is there anyone who talks like this? Why don't we listen carefully? What you need to learn. Is there such a thing as saying that? It's so annoying." George looked helplessly at his brother playing tricks, and said directly, "Brother, even in a duel, you are likely to be knocked down by him at once. The devil knows how many spells he has mastered." The brothers are silent. They know that a person as talented as Peter has a limitless future. Fortunately, both brothers are open-minded and optimistic people. After accepting the gap, they quickly accepted the truth. And Peter was their friend, and they weren't jealous at all. Soon the three of them came to a corner on the 3rd floor, where there stood a statue of a one-eyed witch with a hunchback. Peter tapped the statue with his wand and said, "Separate left and right," under the surprise of the two. Immediately, the witch's hunchback parted, revealing a stone slide. The Weasley brothers looked at the passage in surprise. "Peter, I didn't expect you to find a secret passage. Where does this secret passage lead?" Peter explained with a smile, "The secret passage leads to Hogsmeade and leads to Honeyduke's cellar. And this is not what I found, but the owner of Honeyduke, Mr. Froom told me that if I wanted to in the future, he told me. If you want to buy candy, you can go directly to this aisle, and you can bring snacks for other students. Year 1 and 2 students can't go to Hogsmeade yet. I think there will be many people willing to pay a little errand fee to be able to eat Hogsmeade snacks. When the Weasley brothers heard the last sentence, their eyes lit up. They finally knew why Peter brought them here. Weasley's family is in a difficult situation, even the textbooks for school are secondhand, and it is said that they have pocket money, so the twins will find a way to make money. Although they knew that Peter had money, they would never accept alms. That's why Peter wanted them to master this secret passage, so that they could go through this secret passage and buy things for the students in the school. At that time, they would be able to charge a little errand fee. A copper nut will break the flour. The twins showed a grateful look to Peter, and felt that this friend was too valuable, and they even thought about how to make money for them. Peter pushed the two of them and said, let's go in now, and take advantage of this moment to go to Hogsmeade and have a good time. As he said that, he first slid down the stone slide, came to the underground secret passage, and chanted the magic spell fluorescent flashing, and the wand immediately emitted a bright light, illuminating the dark secret passage. The twins slid down close behind. Cool, I didn't expect there would be a secret passage here. It's great. The twins looked around excitedly. This secret passage will be our purchase channel in the future. Episode 53, The 3 Factors of Magic Release, No Stick and Silent Magic. Peter reminded them, it's pitch black in this secret passage, and you'd better learn the glow spell first, unless you're willing to carry the bulky kerosene lamps. George took out his wand and said fluorescent flash, and his wand lit up too, but quickly went out. A little embarrassed, he said, that's the case. Bright can be bright, but it won't last long. Fred also chanted the spell, his glowing spell that lasted a little longer than George's, but quickly died out. Seeing this situation, Peter had to say, you need to focus, don't just relax after the mantra, but keep thinking about making it shine. Try again. Hearing this, George waved his wand and said fluorescent flashing, and then, as Peter said, kept staring at the light at the top of the wand to keep it from going out. This time it lasted for more than a minute before it went out. Seeing this, George happily shouted, I succeeded. Fred looked at this situation and became more confident. He also chanted the spell, and the wand emitted a brighter light. This time, it took 5 or 6 minutes before it went out. George asked in surprise, why is Fred's brighter and longer than mine? Fred said triumphantly, because I'm more talented than you. Peter shook his head and explained, Professor Flitwick said in his first class that there are 3 important factors for the success of magic casting, namely, the wand, the spell, and the firm belief. The spell is just a medium, and a powerful wizard doesn't even need to recite it. Spell out the spell, you can successfully cast the magic. The most important of the 3 factors is firm belief. Magic is idealistic. As long as you firmly believe in yourself, magic can be successfully cast. And just now Fred was more confident than George, so he persisted longer than you. Hearing Peter's explanation, the two were thoughtful. In the past, they always thought that a spell was a matter of waving a wand, but it turned out to be a mistake. Seeing that both of them understood, Peter felt a little excited about being a teacher for the first time. He stretched out his left hand without a wand, opened his palm, and closed his eyes. After a while, a ball of light suddenly appeared in the empty palm, emitting a soft glow of light. He opened his eyes, looked at the ball of light floating in his hand, and smiled. It was his first attempt, and he came up with the idea while explaining it to the Weasley brothers. The magic of this world is very idealistic, and the successful casting of the patron saint spell requires the recall of happy memories. When casting the death curse, it takes a strong will to kill. The cruciatus requires a vicious thought that wants to torture others. So part of the reason why black magic is banned in the magic world is that if you use black magic regularly, people's mind will be in a negative mood, and eventually they will fall into darkness. When he was explaining, he thought about whether magic was idealistic, so whether he could abandon the wand and incantation, directly mobilize the magic power with his mind, and then firmly believe that he could succeed. Unexpectedly, his test was really successful. Although wandless magic is not as powerful as using a wand, it is the most life-saving skill. In today's magical world, almost all wizards are no different from muggles as long as they don't have wands. But if Peter can master the wandless summoning charm, then with just one thought, he can turn defeat into victory. Rather than holding back. The twins' doubts from the beginning were instantly stunned, as if they had seen a miracle. The two of them trembled, the corners of their mouths twitched, and they said in unbelievable unison, "You actually know magic without a staff and without a sound." "Merlin, I'm dreaming." Peter watched the light in his hand go out, and said excitedly, "This is my first attempt, and I didn't expect it to succeed." Fred shouted dumbfoundedly, "Merlin, hurry up and kill this monster. This is too shocking. It's also 11 years old, why is the gap so big?" George asked excitedly, "How did you succeed, Peter? Tell us, maybe we can succeed too." Peter didn't hide his secrets, he directly explained all his feelings in detail and let them try. As a result, the two of them blushed as if they were having diarrhea, and they didn't move at all. Pfft. George just choked out a fart. Peter directly disliked him and stayed away from him, and said speechlessly, "Are you doing magic or farting?" George smiled shyly, "I couldn't hold back, hee." In the end, the two gave up, agreeing that only a freak can successfully display this ability, which led Peter to chase the two to fight in the secret passage. It didn't take long for them to come to the end of the secret passage. Here are the steps going up, with a trapdoor covering the top. The three walked up and opened the trapdoor to the cellar. Go down the cellar steps and enter the honeydew shop. The shopkeeper Froom, who heard the movement, looked up and saw the three Peters, and instantly showed a warm smile. "Mr. York, it's been a long time. Are you running out of candy? I'll get you what you need." Peter waved his hand and said, "Let's go shopping on the street first, and then buy it when we come back." When Froom heard this, he saw the twins behind him, and said with a smile, "You are bringing your friends here to play, so I wish you a good time." Peter thanked him, then dragged the twins out of the Honeydew store and onto the street. George looked at the candy shop behind him and said enviously, "I didn't expect the shop owner to be very enthusiastic about you, and he even told you this secret way." Peter shook his head and said calmly, "He's just passionate about my Kim Galleon. Come on, let's shop around first." Episode 54, Conflict in the Three Broomsticks Bar. Afterwards, the three of them wandered around, especially when they came to the Joko Magic Joke Shop. The Weasley twins couldn't move their feet at all. They directly bought a few big dung balls with the dozens of copper nut they earned at noon, and then reluctant to leave, Peter wanted to buy them some joke toys, but the brothers firmly refused. Eventually the three came to Three Broomsticks, and this time Peter asked the brothers and a glass of butterbeer, and they didn't say no. The bar was extremely crowded and noisy, hot and smoky, surrounded by adult wizards. When he saw the three of Peter, he joked, "Oh, three naughty ghosts, it's Friday. I remember Hogwarts still. Why are you here in class?" Fred said with a smile, "We didn't have classes in the afternoon, and we just happened to be fine, so we came here for a stroll. We have never been to Hogsmeade." The adult wizard looked at the clever twins with amusement and sneered, "Little brat, we also graduated from Hogwarts. This class schedule hasn't changed for decades, you can't lie to us. Which secret way did you run from? Come out, that's all we have left to play." Then he focused his attention on Peter again, looked at it in amazement, and then noticed the difference in the school uniforms on the three of them, and said in surprise, "When did Slytherin and Gryffindor get along so well? They even came out together." George rolled his eyes and asked, "Uncle, which college did you graduate from? How many years have you graduated?" The middle-aged man recalled, "I graduated from Hufflepuff, and it has been more than 10 years. Now that I think about it, I think it was the happiest time. Little guys, take advantage of the time, have fun, and graduate later. If you don't, you won't be so happy." Watching the twins and the wizard chat happily, Peter took the initiative to buy a drink. He came to the bar and saw the charming bar owner, Ms. Rosmerta, who was flirting with a wizard, and waited for a while. But seeing the wizard still talking about his deeds incessantly, he didn't mean to stop at all. He got impatient and interjected directly, "Hello, I need 3 butterbeers." Rosmerta looked down and saw Peter, and was instantly amazed by this handsome face, and asked with a smile, "Oh, what a handsome little boy. If I hadn't confirmed that you were a boy, I would have thought that there was a charm baby in the store. Do you want butterbeer?" Peter nodded. "Yes, Ms. Rosmerta, 3 glasses." "Wait a minute, handsome boy." Ms. Rosmerta smiled and touched Peter's face, then took out 3 cups and walked into the house behind her. The wizard was talking about the excitement when he was suddenly interrupted. He looked at the little boy in front of him with some displeasure. After seeing the Slytherin logo on him, his face showed disgust and said in a low voice, "Slytherin's little poisonous snake, today is not the weekend, how did you come here?" Peter looked at the wizard's attitude towards him, and said indifferently, "Sir, this doesn't seem to be your concern, you are not a professor at the school." The wizard was stunned for a moment. He didn't expect that this Slytherin kid would dare to choke people. He suddenly burst into anger, took out his wand, shook it threateningly, and said, "Little poisonous snake, you may be used to being intimidating at home, but one thing to remember, don't provoke an adult wizard when you're out there. Your tricks to trick others are not enough to tickle an adult wizard. Remember?" Peter looked indifferently at the emotional wizard who was full of drunkenness in front of him, and said, "Sir, you are drunk. Also, don't spill the anger you got from other Slytherins on me before." The wizard was provoked by this sentence, pointed his wand directly at Peter, and roared hysterically, "You Slytherins are all the same bad bastards, look down on others, and throw them into the toilet if they don't look good. After graduation, just join the Death Eaters and love to torture people. Slytherin people should be damned." Peter looked blankly at the wizard in front of him. This person obviously had bad memories, and he was still targeted by the Slytherin people. But he shouldn't take his anger out on himself after drinking. He directly took out his wand, surrounded by a super strong armor body, facing an adult wizard, even a drunk wizard, he would not dare to care. Everyone else in the bar noticed this scene, their eyes widened and they didn't react. "Finn. What the hell are you doing? Stop it. Do you want to enter Azkaban?" Ms. Rosamerta saw such a thrilling scene as soon as she came out. An adult wizard actually pointed his wand at an 11-year-old child. She yelled at the wizard in shock and anger. The wizard was awakened by Ms. Rosmerta's roar, and when he heard Azkaban, his drunkenness dissipated a little. Seeing what he was doing now, he was instantly in a cold sweat. The wizards do not spare no effort to protect the little wizards. And he actually wanted to curse a child. He hurriedly put away his wand. Ms. Rosmerta waved her wand and put the butterbeer aside. She nervously approached Peter and asked concernedly through the magic barrier, "Son, are you okay?" On the other side, George Fred, who had just had a good chat with the adult wizards, also ran up to Peter in panic and asked, "Peter, how are you? Did he cast a spell on you?" Peter waved his wand and said, "Stop the spell," and pulled the magic barrier down, then smiled at them and said, "Don't worry, he hasn't had time to use the spell. I'm fine." At this moment, the wizard was at a loss, standing aside with a face full of panic. After the twins confirmed that Peter was okay, they rolled up their sleeves and turned to the wizard angrily and shouted, "Why are you treating our friend like this? You cowards! You want to deal with a child? You should be locked up in Azka." Class. Episode 55, The Slug Curse, The Weasley Twins' Fortune Plan. Peter quickly grabbed a pair of twins who wanted to duel with the wizard, and these two guys were not afraid to anger the adult wizard. The drunken wizard was a little sober at this time. Seeing the twins standing beside Peter, he asked in surprise, "You are Gryffindor. Why are you with a Slytherin?" Fred choked, "Can you manage it? You have to apologize to my friend. Otherwise, today's business is not over. My father works at the Ministry of Magic. Get locked up in Azkaban." The prestige of the Ministry of Magic terrified the wizard. He looked at the sight around him and the child in front of him, his face flushed and he apologized to Peter in a low voice, "I'm sorry, I'm drunk and my brain is not sober. I hope you can forgive me." Peter looked at the wizard in front of him coldly and said, "You don't need to apologize to me so reluctantly, as long as you don't appear in front of us." Peter didn't want to make things worse, or else the school would know about them sneaking out of the school. And Hogwarts has a set of unspoken rules, that is, if you don't get caught, you'll be fine, but if you get caught, wait for at least 1 semester of confinement. Ms. Rosmerta didn't smile like Yen Yen when she flirted just now. She pointed at the door angrily and said to the wizard, "Finn, please leave my bar." Finn had a hard time accepting her indifference to himself. "Ms. Rosamerta, you." The proprietress said with a disappointed expression, "I know you and some people in Slytherin don't deal with it, but you shouldn't take your anger out on a child. I'm really glad you haven't done anything more serious, otherwise you'll be in Afghanistan in the future. Azkaban is here. Now please leave my bar." The wizard named Finn left the Three Broomsticks bar in a daze. It's just that he didn't notice that when he was leaving, Peter's wand silently cast a spell on him. This scene was seen by the Weasley twins and Ms. Rosamerta, who were closest to Peter, but the three did not remind Finn, who was leaving. When things calmed down, the tavern became lively again. Those wizards with vision recognized the super armor protection spell that Peter had just cast, and they were very shocked to announce this to other wizards, knowing that they all only knew armor and protection. This 112-year-old child can actually cast an upgraded version of a high-level magic spell. This is so rare. The Weasley twins asked Peter with interest, "What magic did you cast on that person just now?" Ms. Rosmerta also looked at him with a smile. Peter said innocently, "It's just a little trick, it's just to make him spit slugs non-stop these days. After all, he almost attacked me, I have to give him some color." "The slug spell?" The twins reacted immediately when they heard it, then showed a relieved smile, and extended their thumbs to Peter. "It's really yours. That's an unsolvable spell. It will only stop when the spit is finished." "Enough for him." Peter smiled. The slug spell he used was an improved prank spell from Professor Flitwick's notebook, and the effect was much stronger. Enough for the cursed person to suffer for days. As for why Professor Flitwick improved this spell, obviously from the few words in his notebook, it can be guessed that Flitwick was also made difficult by many students when he was a student. And the talented man is obviously not a vegetarian, and he directly used the improved prank spell to teach those who bullied him. Ms. Rosmerta looked at the extremely handsome little boy in front of her, and asked in surprise, "Little handsome boy, are you from that pure blood family? At such a young age, you have super strong armor and body protection. It's amazing." The twins said triumphantly, "Ms. Rosmerta, Peter wasn't born pure blood, he's from the Muggle world." Rosmerta looked at Peter in surprise. She didn't expect such a powerful boy to be Muggle-born. You must know that Muggle students have never been exposed to magic before entering Hogwarts. And this little boy can now have a high-level magic spell that even she can't. It's amazing. She became more enthusiastic in an instant, and put the 3 drinks on the tray in front of the 3. "This is the butterbeer you ordered, and I invite you to drink it for free today. It's my apology for what happened just now, and let you be in my midst." Terrified in the bar. The 3 pushed and refused several times to no avail. Under the insistence of the proprietress, they accepted her kindness and thanked her. "Thank you, Ms. Rosmerta." Thanks to the proprietress, the 3 of them came to an empty seat and sat down with their big glasses of butter beer. "It was a thrill just now, that guy almost cast a spell on you, Peter," Fred exclaimed with lingering fears. "Yes, if it wasn't for you to stop Peter, I really want to punch him in the face. Just because you are a student of Slytherin, he is inexplicably looking for trouble with you, and he will go to those adults if he can. What a cowardice, silly rats," George said angrily. "Okay, don't forget that we are sneaking out of the school now. If there is a big problem, the professors will definitely know about it, and the deduction of points will be a trivial matter at that time, and I am afraid that it will be closed. Even notify the parents. You don't want to get yelling letters," Peter reminded. As soon as the 2 heard it, they immediately died down and slowly tasted the butterbeer. Butterbeer sounds like a type of beer, but it's actually a drink, and it doesn't have much alcohol, which is why Ms. Rosmerta is willing to let her 3 children drink it. It tasted like butterscotch that wasn't that greasy, which was great for someone like Peter who was addicted to sugar. When he decided to leave, he bought some to bring to school to try. George drank the butterbeer and made up his mind and said, "This beer tastes good. I think we can buy this drink for the students who can't come out of the school, and the sales should be good." Fred added, "There is also Joko Widodo's magic joke shop, and the prank props in it should also be liked by many people. At that time, we can write a shopping list for students who want to buy things in advance, and then we will buy it back in one go." Peter suggested to the 2 brothers, "If there are a lot of people buying, you can ask the owner for a cheaper price, I believe they will agree. Then you can earn the difference in price, plus the errand fee, you should be able to make a lot of money." When the 2 heard it, they were immediately excited, and they could not wait to implement their big money-making plan immediately at this moment. Episode 56. Points will be full. Which magical animal to choose? After drinking the butter beer, Peter accidentally clicked into the system panel, only to find that his system points suddenly became 95 points. Only 5 points away from the perfect score. "System, when did my points become so many?" Peter asked in surprise. The system replied, "The host explores and finds a room that responds to requests, and gets close contact with the mainline items, and rewards 10 points. The host uses magic to defeat an adult wizard, and rewards 10 points. Is this also possible?" Peter was dumbfounded. Getting up close and personal with mainline items? Shouldn't it be the crown? But the problem is that the room they opened on request is not the room to hide things. Is this a close encounter? And defeating grown-up wizards? He just used a slug spell to prank the wizard quietly, and he didn't have a hard face. Is this a defeat? Peter has some brain circuits that cannot be understood systematically. However, Peter is very happy to be able to get the points reward. He is only 5 points away from now, and he can exchange for a chance to merge blood. 5 points are easy to get together, and now he has to think about which magical animal to choose. And how to get in touch with these amazing animals. Like an invisible beast that can be invisible and predict the future. An anhinga big enough to fill the entire Hogwarts Great Hall and small enough to fit in a teapot. And the civet cat that split into countless clones after being attacked. A Zowu beast that can travel thousands of miles a day. As well as the phoenix's close relative, the thunderbird that can control the weather and thunder and lightning, etc., are Peter's very coveted abilities. And the basilisk sleeping in the secret room, those eyes that will die if you look directly, and petrified if you look at them, Peter wants to have them too. Maybe there is a snake language ability attached. If these abilities are integrated, Peter believes that he can walk sideways in the magic world in the future. Peter, why are you so happy? Did you think of something funny? The twins asked curiously when they saw Peter's sudden smile. Peter came back to his senses and responded casually, I just thought that tomorrow will be the first Quidditch match, and I'm looking forward to it. The twins believed it, and then said excitedly, the first game is the match between Gryffindor and Slytherin. Charlie and the others have been practicing hard during this time. I believe that the winner will be our Gryffindor. Peter disagreed and said, it's not just you who are practicing during this time, our Slytherin team is also very hard, whoever loses and who wins. It is about the honor of the academy, but Peter firmly stands in his own academy. Square. Then take a good look at the results of tomorrow's game. The loser must agree to a request from the winning side. The twins bet unconvinced. Peter shook his head and rolled his eyes, you guys owed me a bet before, and now you're betting again, I think you're going to have a big somersault on this sooner or later. He remembered that these two guys were in the future of Quidditch in the Odd World Cup, their hard-earned funds were deceived by Ludo Bagman and nothing left. The twins said indifferently, you didn't ask us again. Maybe we win this time, and we can cancel the previous bet. Peter didn't care about these two guys, and he wasn't going to actually ask them. If he likes to gamble with people so much, he has to make them suffer a big loss to keep his memory long. After walking around Hogsmeade, the three decided to go back. Among them, the twins also got a product leaflet from the Joko Magic Joke Shop and the Honeyduke Shop. They were going to take it back to determine the number of people who bought it. When the two bosses heard it, they immediately became enthusiastic about the twins. The school will only allow students from year 3 and up to Hogsmeade on weekends. If there are twins to be promoted at school, their sales are bound to increase. Therefore, they have expressed that if they buy a large amount, they are willing to sell them to the twins at 90% of the original price. The Weasley twins are very happy about this. The price of these candies and joke props is not cheap. The average price is about 1 silver west. And if it is 10% cheaper, you can earn at least 2 copper nat for every item sold. 1 silver west can be equal to 29 copper nat. If they can sell 500 items, they can earn 1 galleon. That's a lot of money for the twins. The twins' business, Peter was not involved in it, he held a small barrel of butterbeer with a shrinking spell in his hand, and after buying a large package of snacks from the candy store, he followed the excited Weasley brothers. He hurried to the school through the deep secret passage. Coming out of the secret passage behind the hunchbacked one-eyed witch statue on the 3rd floor, the three happily walked downstairs, only to bump into the serious-faced Professor McGonagall. Seeing Professor McGonagall's unhappy expression, the three suddenly felt bad, and Peter quickly hid the candy and butterbeer in his hand behind him. Mr. York, I saw it all, you don't have to hide things. Professor McGonagall looked at Peter's hands, which were obviously not from the school. His expression became more serious, but still said, I'm here to find 2 Weasleys today, you can leave first. Okay, goodbye Professor McGonagall. Peter sighed in relief and walked away quickly, ignoring the sad expressions on the Weasley twins behind him. Before he could go far, he saw Professor McGonagall directly lift one ear of the 2 of them and roared angrily, how dare you sell your own potions to your classmates? You even encouraged them to cheat in potions class. Professor Snape told me, in the potions class in the afternoon, he discovered that many students secretly changed their own potions when they were testing potions. They were drinking alternate potions of unknown origin. He was very angry about it, because many students said you sold them the potion. This is a very serious matter. What if a student drinks your potion and has an accident? You will be locked up for a month. The confinement of. Peter laughed as he listened to McGonagall's anger behind him and the twins pleading for mercy. He had expected this for a long time. In addition to being a master of potions, Snape also had attainments in legilimency. These pure and simple students, even if Snape did not need legitimacy, could easily see them. There is a ghost in my heart. Episode 57, The Edge of the Forbidden Forest, Meeting Hagrid. Back from Hogsmeade, the school afternoon had just ended, and dinner was a long way off. After returning the snacks he bought to the dormitory, Peter did not go to the library to read books, but walked along the Quidditch pitch to the Forbidden Forest. Looking at the deep Forbidden Forest, Peter guessed if there were magical animals of his choice in it. Alas, students are not allowed to enter the Forbidden Forest. Which academy are you a student? Why are you here? A loud voice came from outside a hut in the distance. Peter turned to look, and saw a giant nearly 2 or 3 meters tall, walking towards him. The rough face, the beard, and the fierceness all over his body made Peter know that this person was a good person. Couldn't help but take a few steps back. Hagrid walked in and found out that he was a Slytherin student. He couldn't help frowning and asked cautiously, "What are you doing here? Do you want to go to the Forbidden Forest?" Peter pretended to be innocent and explained, "I just came here by walking. I know the Forbidden Forest is very dangerous, so I won't put myself in danger. So don't worry, sir, I won't rush in." Then he asked curiously, "Sir, are you a professor in the school? I remember that you were the one who picked us up into the castle when we entered the school." It was the first time that Hagrid saw a Slytherin student who was so polite to him. He coughed a little uncomfortably, the resistance on his face a little lessened. He shook his head and said, "My name is Hagrid, I'm not a professor, I'm from the school. Key Keeper and Forbidden Forest Keeper." Peter pretended to be surprised and admired and said, "Mr. Hagrid, you are amazing. I heard that there are many dark creatures in the Forbidden Forest, but you are actually responsible for guarding the Forbidden Forest. I heard that there are werewolves in it, Mr. Hagrid, have you seen them? Will they not? Are you going to come here?" Being stared at by a Slytherin student with adoring eyes, Hagrid was very useful, but at the same time a little uncomfortable, and said, "Just call me Hagrid. There are indeed werewolves in the Forbidden Forest, but they all live in the depths of the Forbidden Forest. I will come here, there are 8 eyes here, ahem, so I can't get into Hogwarts, don't worry." Immediately, he made an expulsion and said, "Come on, don't stay here. Although it is only the edge of the Forbidden Forest, it is still very dangerous for you little wizards." As Hagrid kept pushing and shoving Peter, Peter asked, "Eight-eyed what? Hagrid, do you mean there are other dangerous animals in the Forbidden Forest?" Hagrid was a little impatient with this curious little wizard, and he only said, "This is not your concern, go back, or I will tell your dean." Peter still didn't give up and asked, "I heard that Professor Keitelborn, who is an elective in the 3rd grade, the protection of magical animals, lives in the Forbidden Forest. Hagrid, do you know how to contact him? I like magical animals very much, wanted to take this course in 3rd grade. So wanted to ask him some questions. Hagrid, can you help me?" When he heard that Peter likes magical animals, Hagrid's attitude softened a little. As a fan of magical animals, he is close to Professor Keitelborn in the protection of magical animals class, and Keitelborn strongly recommends Hagrid as his successor in the future. Hagrid looked at the Slytherin first-year student in front of him, and asked suspiciously, "You really think so, not for anything else?" Peter tried his best to be sincere, nodded to Hagrid, and threw a bang, saying, "I have a phoenix, and I want to discuss with the professor how to take care of it." Saying that, he summoned Field directly. With a puff, a flame flashed from the sky, and a gorgeous phoenix flew out, making a pleasing sound, and then landed on Peter's shoulder. Hagrid looked at this scene with surprise, especially the very beautiful phoenix, Merlin's beard. "I thought only Dumbledore had a phoenix in the wizarding world, but I didn't expect anyone to tame it, and it was an 11-year-old child." Peter explained, "I didn't tame this. My dad is a wildlife conservation expert. He found Field, who was still an egg at the time, in the virgin forest of South America and sent it to me. By the way, Field was my gift. It's named after it." Hagrid asked inexplicably, "Specialist in wildlife conservation? Does this profession exist in the magic world?" Seeing his puzzled expression, Peter understood that he regarded himself as a pure-blood wizard, and explained, "I'm a Muggle-born wizard, and as a wildlife conservation expert, it's similar to what Newt Scamander does to protect magical animals. It's just that one is in the Muggle world, and the other is in the wizarding world." Hagrid looked at the boy in front of him in surprise. "Are you Muggle-born? Doesn't Slytherin only recruit pure-blood and half-blood wizards?" Peter shrugged, "I'm the only Muggle student to be sorted into Slytherin in nearly 100 years, and I'm surprised too." After hearing that Peter was a Muggle-born, Hagrid was no longer wary of him, but said comfortingly, "That sorting hat is crazy, it has been used for another 1,000 years, and I think it is because of a broken brain to put you in there." Slytherin is very unfriendly to Muggle-born students. You're not being bullied by them, are you? Peter was amused by the sudden concern of the 3-meter man. Apparently Slytherin's notoriety was already well known and deeply ingrained. He didn't turn down Hagrid's offer, and he came here to befriend him. In the future, if he wants to integrate the blood of magical animals, he has to find the source of magical animals. And Hagrid, who is a fan of magical animals and guards of the Forbidden Forest, is a very suitable candidate. There are a lot of magical animals living in the Forbidden Forest. Befriending Hagrid allows him to get in touch with these animals at the first time without having to search for fusion objects. Peter shook his head and said, "I beat everyone else in the Slytherin Chief Scramble, so none of them dared to mess with me." "Nice job. You should teach them a good lesson. These people are so bad, many of their parents are under the Dark Lord, and they quibble that they were cursed to do so and escaped punishment." Hagrid said a little excitedly, then reacted, and said to Peter a little embarrassedly, "Of course I'm talking about the lackeys of the Dark Lord. Muggle children like you are definitely different." Episode 58, The Target Bird-Snake, Professor Kelter-Burn. Afterwards, Hagrid widened his eyes and stared at the phoenix on Peter's shoulder in fascination, and murmured, "The phoenix is really a magical creature, beautiful and powerful, capable of fighting dragons." He stretched out his huge palm, as if he wanted to touch but didn't dare, and asked nervously, "Can I touch him?" "That phoenix in Dumbledore is very grumpy and always ignores me." Peter nodded with a smile, and then motioned Field to fly to Hagrid. In order to achieve his goal, it was understandable that Field would be taken advantage of. So Field reluctantly flew over to Hagrid's shoulders, combing his feathers. Hagrid didn't expect such good benefits, and was immediately flattered. He carefully touched the phoenix's feathers, looked at Field's long tail feathers, and said in surprise, "Field is a boy. No wonder it's so beautiful." Peter was a little surprised. He was able to communicate with Field before he knew his gender. He didn't expect Hagrid to recognize his gender so quickly. "Hagrid, how did you know Field's gender?" Hagrid said confidently, "Phoenixes are birds, and birds are generally more beautiful than males. Dumbledore's phoenix fox is a female phoenix. She is not as good-looking as Field." Field could understand people's words, and when he heard Hagrid's praise of his beauty, he raised his head proudly, and he decided to be nice to this half-giant. Peter looked at Field's performance, and it was a little funny. Field was born not long ago, and he was still very young in age. The only time he had nirvana was because of Peter, so his personality was more like a child, and his mood was fluctuating. While Hagrid was admiring Field, Peter asked casually, "Hagrid, do you know such a magical animal as a bird snake?" "I have seen their introduction in a book. It is said that the eggshell of a bird snake is sterling silver. And this magical animal is as big as it should be, big enough to fill a large space, and small enough to hide in a small teapot or even a smaller space." Hagrid said confidently that he is familiar with magical animals. "Of course you know that bird snakes are magical animals living in the Far East. They have the body of a snake and the wings of birds. They eat insects, mice, birds and monkeys. Their eggs are made of the purest, softest silver. So many wizards are playing with it. It's an endangered species now." Then Hagrid said angrily, "Not long ago, there was an idiot named Lockhart who actually declared in the newspaper that he hoped to use bird snake eggs to produce a lot of bird snake egg yolk shampoo. He really should use his brain not much bigger than the fairy to think about it. Think, bird snakes are already very rare. He still wants to use such precious bird snake eggs to care for his hair. How stupid." Fortunately that fool's suggestion was taken as a joke, otherwise it would be a pity for these poor little guys. Hagrid said proudly, "Although the bird snake is now on the verge of extinction in the Far East, many people don't know that in England, these little guys have been saved a lot by Newt Scamander, and they are now all with Newt Scamander. Live together in Dorset. I went to see it once. It's spectacular." Hundreds of bird snakes were gathered by Newt Scamander, gathered in a huge space created by magic, and lived freely. Peter was surprised. "Hagrid, I didn't expect you to know Master Scamander. I've read most of his book Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them, and the content is very exciting." Hagrid raised his chest and said complacently, "Of course I know, Newt is very good. He likes magical animals very much like me. He has been running around to save endangered magical animals all year round. He once wanted to give me 2 of his sniffers. Sniff, it's just that I can't stand these energetic little guys, so I refuse. By the way, do you know Sniff?" It is also a kind of magical animal, with a bag that can never be filled, always likes shiny things, and Gringotts trains them to find treasures. Peter nodded and said, I've seen it in Scamander's books, it looks like a platypus in the Muggle world. It looks cute. Hagrid looked around suddenly, and whispered in Peter's ear, in fact, there are bird snakes not only in Newt's place, but also in the school's forbidden forest. There is already a population. I went to see it not long ago, many bird and snake eggs are about to break their shells. These bird snakes were quietly cultivated by Kelterborn. When he visited Scamander, he asked for a pair of bird snakes, and then developed into the current size. I won't tell him to ordinary people. When Peter heard it, he was immediately pleasantly surprised. He was still thinking about how to catch up with Scamander, but he didn't expect that there were birds and snakes in the Forbidden Forest. He asked excitedly, Hagrid, I wonder if I can follow you to the Forbidden Forest to see the birds and snakes? When Hagrid heard this, he instantly looked at Peter vigilantly, and said, Are you like everyone else, wanting to pay attention? That's not possible. Peter didn't know whether to laugh or cry. His goal was not just some silver. He said speechlessly, Hagrid, you are overthinking. I am a noble in Muggle society, so I don't want to covet some silver. I just want to see this kind of thing. Fantastic beasts. Hagrid thought the same thing, then relaxed, but still shook his head and refused. No, the bird snake lives in the depths of the Forbidden Forest, which is not a place for students to go. And these little guys are raised by Celtic-born, I can't take others to see it without his consent. Seeing Hagrid's lack of oil and salt, Peter changed his approach, so, Hagrid, say hello to Professor Celtborn first, and say that if he can take me to see the bird and snake, I'm willing to take field lend him to observe for a day. I think Professor Celtborn should be interested in such a rare species as the phoenix. Hearing this, Hagrid didn't refuse, and said with a certain look, he will definitely agree to your request. At the beginning, Celtic-born wanted to borrow Dumbledore's phoenix, but it didn't work. This time I have you. The phoenix, he is afraid that he will agree immediately. Episode 59. The cabin is a guest and asks the magical animals. After a while of chatting, Hagrid lost his initial resistance, and in order to spend more time with Phoenix, he invited Peter to his cabin. Peter readily agreed. In order to integrate his bloodlines in the future, he would definitely befriend Hagrid, and although this 3-meter man was a bit simple in thinking, he was still very reliable. The two came to Hagrid's cabin, which was closer to the edge of the Forbidden Forest than Peter had just been, with a crossbow and a pair of rubber galoshes in front of the door of the cabin. A big black dog was lying at the gate, the saliva from the corner of its mouth kept flowing, and its size was a little scary. As soon as the big dog saw Hagrid, it rushed over with its tail wagging, and then when it saw Peter, it grinned and roared viciously, as if it was about to rush over to bite him at any time. Peter just pulled out his wand to defend himself, he didn't want to be bitten by a dog. Yeah, shut up. Go back. Hagrid called to the big dog, and then said to Peter, yeah, looks big, but he's very timid, just to scare you, he doesn't dare to talk, don't worry. Peter can't believe Hagrid's definition of not dangerous. In his eyes, the vicious 3-headed dog is just cute, and the man-eating 8-eyed giant spider is not dangerous and even wants to raise a dragon. Random Peter walked into Hagrid's cabin, still on guard. There is only one room in the cabin, with turkeys, pheasants and ham hanging from the ceiling, a pot of boiling water in a copper pot in a brazier, and a large bed in the corner with a quilt made of rags. Next to the fire is a clean wooden table and chairs. Hagrid looked at the bright Peter, and said a little embarrassedly, please sit down, I'm a little messy here, please don't mind. Peter looked around. Although it was a log cabin, it was only relative to Hagrid's size. Peter's small body feels very spacious inside. He directly found a stool to sit on, and then put Field on the table. He said to Hagrid sincerely, it's really nice here, Hagrid, how long have you lived here? Seeing that Peter didn't dislike it, Hagrid was very happy. He went to the cupboard at the foot of the bed, opened it and rummaged for a while, then took out a bag of tea, went to the boiling copper pot, and sprinkled the tea into it. Then he said with a smile, I don't remember very clearly how long I lived here, anyway, it's been at least a few decades. Since my father died, when I was young, the merciful Dumbledore looked at me and let me live here, as gamekeeper. Didn't make me homeless. Peter was familiar with these things, and he also knew that Hagrid was framed as Myrtle's murderer by Tom Riddle, a senior at the time, Voldemort, who was expelled from school and broke his wand. If it weren't for Dumbledore's resistance, he would have been in Azkaban, and Dumbledore knew he was wronged, so he took him in at Hogwarts and repaired his broken wand with the Elder Wand. Although he knew that there were birds and snakes in the Forbidden Forest, Peter still wanted to ask other animals, so that in the future, after the points were full, they could exchange their favorite bloodlines. Peter asked curiously, Hagrid, are there any other magical animals in the Forbidden Forest? Are there any invisible beasts, or thunderbirds, or something? Hagrid thought he liked fantastic beasts, so he asked. So he laughed and said loudly, if you want to ask where fantastic beasts are, except for Newt Scamander and Keltborn, that's all I know. Most. Back then, I also wanted to learn from Scamander to discover magical animals all over the world, so I specifically asked them for advice, and even chatted with those animal smugglers to learn a lot of information about magical animals. Well, let me think about it. In the case of invisible beasts, there are indeed in the Forbidden Forest, but I have only seen them once by chance. These guys are too shy. They can be invisible and can predict the future, so it is difficult for ordinary people to find them. To say that Newt is still the best, he has a family of invisible beasts there. It is said that they have been raising them since the 1920s, and they have been raising them for several generations now. As for thunderbirds, they are close relatives of phoenixes. They are also very beautiful. They can summon thunderstorms and sense danger in advance. It's just that these birds are now living in North America. Newt raised one when he was young, and was later brought back to its hometown by him and released. So if you want to see this magical animal, you have to fly to the North American desert to see it. Seeing Peter's disappointed expression, Hagrid thought there were no magical animals in the Forbidden Forest, so he quickly said, although there are no thunderbirds in the Forbidden Forest, there are unicorns, hippogriffs, and thestrals. Fantastic animals and centaur tribes exist, but it's wonderful inside. Then, as if he had reacted, he covered his mouth and muttered, why do I seem to be trying to confuse you into the Forbidden Forest? Seeing this scene, Peter burst out laughing and said jokingly, if I enter the Forbidden Forest in the future, I'll blame you for making it so magical that I can't help it. Hagrid took it seriously, and quickly waved his hand to dissuade him. No, you can't enter the Forbidden Forest by yourself in the future. It's very dangerous. Not only are there werewolves, but there are also eight-eyed giant spiders. In short, it's very dangerous. Calm down, please calm down, Hagrid. Peter reassured him, I'm just joking. You know I'm a Slytherin, and I won't put myself in danger until I'm sure. So you don't have to. Worried I'd rush in like a Gryffindor. Episode 60, Calling Voldemort's Name, Dumbledore Comes. Hearing this, Hagrid reacted with a groan, and said naively, I just remembered now that you are a Slytherin, Peter, you really don't look like a Slytherin. You have a good heart, and it always makes me forget your identity. Peter reluctantly said, although it may sound like bragging, maybe I am the real Slytherin. I have always thought that the atmosphere in the academy was ruined by that Voldemort. I have checked a lot. According to the data, although the previous Slytherins were not very gregarious, they were not as unpopular as they are now. I never thought that any college must be a good person, and anyone must be a bad person. Hagrid shuddered when he heard the words, so frightened that the copper pot he just lifted almost lost his grip. With a look of admiration in his horror, he said with a trembling voice, You actually said the name of the mysterious man just now. Merlin, you are the one who dares to call him by his name except Dumbledore. Don't you know that he cast a spell on this name? Just read his name, and he and his minions can sense it. In the past, many people were caught by the Death Eaters and tortured to death. No one dares to call him by his first name. Child, you are so courageous. Peter shrugged and said, Didn't the Ministry of Magic say he's dead, and his minions are locked up in Azkaban? How can he still come to school to trouble me? You know there's Dumbledore here, Hagrid said uneasily, but I heard from Dumbledore that the Dark Lord wasn't dead, he just disappeared, and now he might be hiding somewhere, lingering. Waiting for his comeback. Peter fearlessly spread his hands and said, Then I will call him by his first name. A person who has already lost once is not worth being too afraid of. When I was in the Muggle world, my teacher once told me a famous saying, despise the enemy strategically, and value the enemy tactically. Although Voldemort is terrifying, he is also a human being, not a demon. We don't need to fear him so much, and of course we can't despise him. As long as you treat it with a normal heart, there is a solution to everything, but I just didn't think of it for the time being. Clap clap. There was a burst of applause outside the door, and the two turned around to see that it was Dumbledore and Professor Snape standing outside the door, and it was Dumbledore who was applauding. Principal Dumbledore. Professor Snape. The two looked at the two outside the door in surprise. Of course, Peter was pretending. He noticed someone outside the door early on, so he didn't ask about the magical beasts, but made a big point. Of course, this is also his real thought. Dumbledore walked into the house first and looked at Peter with satisfaction. Peter's words just now fit his heart and he said, "Peter, can I call you that?" "Of course, Professor Dumbledore." Peter nodded. Dumbledore looked delighted, and he sighed, "You said it very well. I've tried to get everyone to put their fears aside, the brave side of the dilemma, but none of them adults can compare to a child. The fear is passed on to the next generation. Voldemort is not a god, he is just a wizard who has gone astray, and as long as we are united, there will be no difficulties." Then Dumbledore turned his head and shouted at Snape outside the door, "Severus, come in, we're here just in time, Hagrid's black tea is ready." "Just in time for a drink." Snape walked in after hearing the words. When he saw Peter, his expression was a little complicated. He also heard Peter's words just now, and he could tell from the tone of voice that it was Peter's true thoughts. That's why his mood was a little fluctuating. He didn't know whether to ridicule the child for his ignorance, or to praise his courage. Peter shouted respectfully, "Professor Snape." Snape nodded, then stood motionless. Dumbledore waved the elder wand in his hand, 2 more chairs were added, and then he sat down, like a master, beckoning everyone to sit down. "Come on, don't stand, Hagrid, sit down too, and also bring your sugar cube, let's have a cup of afternoon tea." The rectangular wooden table, Dumbledore and Snape sat on one side, Hagrid's huge body directly occupied the other side, which made Peter in the main seat feel a thorn under his butt and wanted to move. 4 teacups flew from Hagrid's cabinet and landed in front of the 4 people, and the copper kettle automatically filled the 4 cups with tea. Hagrid's teacup is in line with his identity as a half-giant. It is said that the teacup is actually about the same as a big bowl. 4 cups are just enough to empty the tea in the copper pot. Dumbledore asked the 3, "How many sugar cubes do you need?" Hagrid said as usual, $5. Snape looked at the big bowl of tea in front of him, frowned, and said lightly, 2 pieces will do." After looking at the calculation of the amount of tea, he directly shouted, $4 is enough, Headmaster Dumbledore." Immediately, the sugar cubes fall into the corresponding teacups according to each person's needs, and rotate by themselves. Then a few people saw with a toothache that Dumbledore put the rest of the dozen or so sugar cubes into his own tea. After a while, the tea has turned into sweet and greasy sugar water. Dumbledore picked up the large teacup that covered his face, took a sip, and narrowed his eyes comfortably. Snape next to him has made an undisguised expression of disgust, constantly complaining about the old bee. How can you not get tired of eating so much sugar? Although Peter already knew that Dumbledore was addicted to sugar, he didn't expect it to be so scary. This is no longer sugar. Looking at Dumbledore's white and complete teeth, he was very curious about how Dumbledore protected his teeth from cavities. Hagrid drank black tea and asked, "Headmaster Dumbledore, why did you and Professor Snape suddenly come to my hut? It's so rare." Hagrid was very happy, he hadn't been here for so many people for a long time.